Hey everyone, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian. Today's video, I wanted to get into a bottle that I've probably mentioned on several other videos in the past. It's something that I recommend often if it's something that you all can find or someone wants to splurge for, and that happens to be the Rebel 10-year. You all may know, but if you don't, this changed names recently. This is a Luxco brand. It used to be Rebel Yell, but now they've dropped the Yell, and we've just gone to Rebel. Now this is their age 10-year, 100 proof single barrel. So to get that out of the way, you know, the downside about this is I've heard a lot of people say they've run into barrels that are not very good. And so I do want to put a disclaimer. I don't want you to run out and go get a bottle and say, Brian, you told me it would be awesome, and I'm disappointed. And it's your fault that I wasted the money. Maybe. So I'm sorry if that's the case, but when you can find this product, and I don't see it all that often, but it does pop up in stores that I can walk in, at least here, and go get at a relatively affordable price. Now, I will say it seems like the MSRP, or at least the price they're charging, has gone up. I recently grabbed a bottle of this from Total Wine, and it was $100. Before, it was somewhere like $60, $65. So $60 to $65 for a 100 proof 10-year weeded bourbon. You have a really good value, a really good deal there. And you all probably know from the channel, I've talked before that, you know, weededs aren't necessarily always my wheelhouse, but this is one that I feel like I can't really pass up. It's such a good bottle for its value, but I've talked about it, but I've not really gotten into it here on the channel. So I figured, why not dive into it, and we'll talk about it a little bit. While I have you here, jump down below, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Help me continue to grow the channel and the content here in 2023. So again, this comes from Luxco. I think it's probably most assumed that this is Heaven Hill distilled or similar to the old Fitzgerald line of things. So if you were to compare the old Fitzgerald 100 proof bottled in bonds, now again, this is not marked as a bottled in bond product, and it is a single barrel product. However, 100 proof 10-year weeded mash bill, allegedly, presumably, maybe from Heaven Hill, you have to expect that at the price points we're talking about, whether it's $65 or $100, if you're able to find it for that, we're looking at something that might be a really good deal. Nice kind of copper, honey-like color there. Legs, nothing to super write home about. But let's go ahead and dive into the nose anyway. Oh yeah, you get a lot of that oak right away and some of that wood char right away. I feel that if you wanted to notice kind of some cherry and raspberry fruitiness, then, you know, it might jump out as fruit forward to you. If you were kind of diving for maybe like the oiled leathers, you would be able to pick up on those as well. And then that kind of old, oaky, nutty, slightly sour fruit note. It's really enjoyable. It's really sweet, yet still old age. It's sweet, yet still has some depth to it. Let's go ahead and dive in on the palate on this one. Man, right away on the palate, I get a big blast of cherry pie, and then a big blast of kind of old oak and well-oiled leather. For not really having crazy legs, oh, now it's starting to show a little bit for me. But for it not seeming super rich on the nose, it is, I don't want to say it's overly rich on the palate, but it is definitely drinks full, especially for 100 proof. It drinks really nice. You get a blast, like a burst, an eruption, explosion, if you will, of fruit initially. I feel like it's got a little bit of spice in there, a little bit of orange zest, especially the more it lingers on the palate, and kind of cherry, like I mentioned, initially on that palate. Good sweetness, good spice, honestly, right in the middle. It reminds me of like some of these things I really like about a George T. Stagg or something like that. Some of the old oak, but still has baking spice, sugary sweetness. There's a lot of things going on right around that mid palate that I really, really like. It almost, when I talk about the richness, it's not like it has a very syrupy mouthfeel, but it feels like you've taken a bite out of a slice of chocolate cake. You know, it's got like kind of that dense heaviness. You probably can't have too much of it, or you're gonna kind of make yourself sick. It has that kind of mouthfeel to it but also a little bit of that chocolate sweetness from the cake, as well as maybe a little bit of chocolate icing. But then where you get all the richness, all the heavy concentration of flavors, I think is in the finish. And maybe that's again where I bring up the George T. Stagg reference. It's kind of musty, kind of funky a little bit. It has not quite as much as Wild Turkey, but kind of those wine-soaked fruits, those slightly sour grape-like notes there to a lesser extent, but these chocolatey, leathery, like strong oak that's a little bit musty kind of finish to it. Man, it's the whole package again. I think it's got like a softness to it that's different than the rye forward bourbons. It doesn't bite as much, but it still kind of gives you some flavors that you might like without being overly medicinal as maybe the Wild Turkey, as maybe the Calumets, or anything in those lines. It gives you a very easy drinking, still leathery, oaky profile. I don't feel like I'm lacking in proof. I don't think it drinks under 100 proof either. And just all around, I think really good balance to all the flavors here. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. It's very balanced. I was gonna do a comparison with Eagle Rare. I had done a little intro for it. I had poured it out here, but you really can't compare it to Eagle Rare. I know there are other Heaven Hill products too I could compare that's in the 10-year range, but so many people like it. So many people reach for it. It's a little lower in the rye, so I thought maybe it'd be closer. But when I really got down to tasting the Eagle Rare, it was so much more kind of candied, apple, clean, refined fruits. And even though it has a decent amount of oak to it, it's not the same. And so I don't want to bring in that comparison necessarily, because I don't want to lead you on to think that they're so similar to one another, because they're really not. This Rebel 10 really packs a lot of kind of creamy, nutty, oaky, slightly fruity flavor in a really creamy, balanced package. And that's why I think it's one of the things that I'm going to continue to recommend for people as a nice, affordable, age-stated, weeded bourbon. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in to another video. I hope it was informational. I hope it was insightful to you all. Let me know if you all have tried either the Rebel Yell when they were doing the single barrels or this Rebel 10, what you all have thought about them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you all think. I'd also like to know if there's other things you want to hear me talk about on future videos. Leave me a message. Let me know if there's other things I can talk about here on the channel. Until next time, everybody, we'll see you all later.